Hello, dear friends, and welcome to a journey that will change how you see yourself. Today, you're not just going to read words, you're going to discover your own strength. This is a story about fear, doubt, failure, and incredible transformation. It's about ordinary people who became extraordinary, not because they were born special, but because they learned one simple truth. Fear is not your enemy. Fear is your teacher. You're going to learn how small acts of courage create big changes. You'll see how they turned their biggest fears into their greatest strengths. You'll discover how they found confidence when everyone said they weren't good enough. And here's the beautiful part. You won't just feel inspired, you'll also learn practical ways to build courage in your own life. Every lesson uses simple, clear language that anyone can understand. While you follow this amazing journey, you're not just reading about bravery. You're building your own courage muscle and discovering what you're truly capable of. So, take a deep breath. Put away your doubts for a moment. Let this story show you how to turn fear into power, how to build confidence that lasts, and how to believe in yourself when the world feels scary. This is the story of transformation. This is about discovering the hero inside you. Let's begin. Part 1. The Prison We Build. Meet Sarah, a 28-year-old teacher from a small town in Ohio. Every morning, she looked in the mirror and saw the same person, someone who played it safe, someone who never took risks, someone who said, "I can't," more than "I will try." Sarah had dreams, big dreams. She wanted to write a novel about her grandmother's immigration story. She wanted to travel alone through Europe, visiting all the places her students only read about in textbooks. She wanted to start her own tutoring business and help struggling students find their confidence. She wanted to speak at education conferences and share her teaching methods with other educators. But every single time she thought about doing something new, something that mattered, a familiar voice in her head would whisper its warnings. What if you fail completely? What if people laugh at your ideas? What if you're not smart enough, talented enough, brave enough? This voice was fear. And fear had built an invisible prison around her life, brick by brick, excuse by excuse. Sarah's daily routine had become a masterpiece of avoidance. She taught the same lessons she'd been teaching for 5 years. She ate lunch alone in her classroom instead of joining other teachers. She drove the same route to work every day. She ordered the same coffee, shopped at the same stores, watched the same TV shows. Her life had become small, predictable, and painfully safe. At night, she would lie awake thinking about all the things she wished she could do. She would imagine herself confident and successful, traveling to new places, meeting interesting people, making a real difference in the world. But when morning came, fear would be waiting for her, ready with 1,000 reasons why today wasn't the right day to start. Sarah's story is not unusual. Most people live in this same invisible prison. They dream big but act small. They want change but choose comfort. They wish for courage but listen to fear. And year after year, their dreams get smaller, while their regrets get bigger. They become experts at explaining why they can't, instead of discovering what they could. The weight of unspoken dreams. What most people don't realize is how heavy unexpressed dreams become. Every time Sarah saw a travel documentary, she felt a sharp pain in her chest. Every time she read a book, she wondered what stories were trapped inside her own mind. Every time a student struggled with confidence, she saw herself, someone with so much to give but too afraid to try. Fear wasn't just stopping Sarah from doing things. Fear was stopping her from becoming who she was meant to be. And the saddest part? She had been living this way for so long that she had almost convinced herself she didn't really want those things anyway. I'm not really a writer, she would tell herself. I don't actually want to travel alone. That would be lonely and scary. But deep down, She knew she was lying to herself. The dreams were still there, buried under layers of fear and excuses, but still alive, still calling to her in quiet moments. The moment everything changed. One rainy Tuesday morning in October, Sarah was teaching her 6th grade English class about courage in literature. They were discussing characters who faced their fears and changed their lives. Her student Emma raised her hand and asked a question that would change everything. "Miss Sarah, why don't adults do what they dream about?" In all these stories, the heroes are brave, but most grown-ups I know just complain about their lives. Why don't they change things like the people in books? The classroom went quiet. 12 pairs of young eyes looked at their teacher, waiting for wisdom about how the adult world really worked. And Sarah realized with a crushing certainty that she had no good answer. Because she was one of those adults Emma was talking about, someone who had let fear win. That evening, Sarah sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold beside her. She opened a notebook and wrote 3 words: "Fear stops me." She stared at those words for a long time. Then, almost without thinking, she wrote something else. "But what if fear helped me instead?" This question hit her like lightning. What if she had been thinking about fear all wrong? What if fear wasn't her enemy trying to destroy her dreams, but a misguided friend trying to protect her? Understanding fear's true purpose. That night, Sarah began to research fear. She learned that fear has a job: to keep us alive. For thousands of years, fear helped humans survive dangerous situations. When our ancestors heard a rustling bush, fear made them run before they could see if it was a predator. Those who listened to fear lived. Those who ignored it often died. But in modern life, Sarah realized, this same survival system was working against her. Her brain couldn't tell the difference between a real tiger and an imaginary rejection. When she thought about submitting her writing or speaking in public, her ancient alarm system screamed "danger" just as loudly as if she were facing a wild animal. Fear was still trying to protect her, but it was protecting her from growth, from opportunity, from the life she actually wanted. Fear thought it was keeping her safe, but it was actually keeping her small. Sarah discovered something that changed her entire perspective. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and choosing to act anyway. Brave people aren't people who don't feel scared. They're people who have learned to move forward despite being scared. The decision that changed everything. The next morning, Sarah made a decision that would transform her entire life. Instead of trying to eliminate fear, she would learn to work with it. Instead of waiting until she felt confident, she would start building confidence through action. She decided to start with something tiny. Not writing a whole novel, but writing 1 page. Not planning a European adventure, but trying a new restaurant in the next town. Not giving a conference presentation, but asking 1 question at the next teachers' meeting. This was the beginning of what she would later call her courage experiment. Part 2. The first small steps. Sarah's first challenge was simple: eat lunch in the teacher's lounge instead of hiding in her classroom. This might sound easy, but for someone who had avoided the lounge for 5 years, it felt enormous. On Monday morning, she packed her lunch as usual, but instead of heading to her empty classroom, she walked toward the teacher's lounge. Her heart started beating faster. Her hands began to sweat. Fear was screaming at her. "Turn around. They don't want you there. You'll sit alone and look pathetic. Go back to your safe classroom." Sarah stopped in the hallway and took 3 deep breaths. She reminded herself of her new understanding. Fear is trying to protect me. but I don't need protection from making friends. She opened the door to the teacher's lounge. 5 teachers were sitting around the table, talking and laughing. When Sarah walked in, they looked up and smiled. "Sarah, we never see you in here. Come sit with us." Mrs. Chen, the art teacher, moved her bag to make room. Mr. Rodriguez asked about her classes. Ms. Thompson shared a funny story about her morning. For 30 minutes, Sarah ate lunch with colleagues and realized she had been avoiding something wonderful: connection with people who understood her job, her challenges, her world. That afternoon, she wrote in a new journal. Day 1 of Courage Experiment. I was afraid, but I did it anyway. Fear told me I would be rejected and alone. Instead, I was welcomed and included. Fear lied to me. Building the courage muscle. Over the next month, Sarah designed what she called fear challenges, small, manageable actions that pushed her comfort zone slightly. Each challenge taught her something new about herself and about how fear worked. Week 1, social courage. Ate lunch in the teacher's lounge, Monday. Asked a colleague about her weekend, Tuesday. Suggested a new classroom activity in a team meeting, Wednesday. Called her sister instead of just texting, Thursday. Said hello to 3 neighbors she'd never spoken to, Friday. Each day, fear tried to stop her. Each day she felt nervous, but each day she proved to herself that she could handle feeling uncomfortable. She started to see a pattern. Fear was loudest right before she acted, but usually disappeared once she started. Week 2, creative courage. Wrote 1 paragraph of her grandmother's story, Monday. Shared a teaching idea on a Facebook education group, Tuesday. Tried painting during her free period, Wednesday. Sang along to music in her car with the windows down, Thursday. Posted a photo of her classroom on Instagram, Friday. Sarah discovered something amazing. When she did small creative acts, she felt more alive. Colors seemed brighter, food tasted better, she slept deeper. Creativity, she realized, wasn't just about making things. It was about expressing who she really was. Week 3, learning courage. Attended a weekend workshop on creative writing, Saturday. Asked questions during the workshop instead of sitting silently, Saturday. Tried a yoga class alone, Tuesday. Downloaded a language learning app for Spanish, Wednesday. Watched YouTube videos about solo travel, Friday. This week taught Sarah that learning felt like courage because it required admitting she didn't know everything. For years, she had avoided new experiences because she was afraid of being a beginner. But being a beginner, she realized, was the first step to becoming good at anything. Week 4, adventure courage. Drove to a town she'd never visited, Saturday. Ate at a restaurant alone, Saturday. Took a different route to work every day. Tried 3 foods she'd never eaten before. Bought a travel guide for Italy, Friday. By the end of the month, Sarah had made an incredible discovery. Courage was like a muscle. The more she used it, the stronger it became. Things that had seemed impossible 4 weeks earlier now felt manageable. The science behind courage. Curious about her transformation, Sarah began reading research about fear and courage. She learned that her experience matched what scientists had discovered about how the brain works. Neuroplasticity. The brain can form new pathways throughout life. Every time Sarah chose courage over comfort, she was literally rewiring her brain to be braver. Her neural pathways for confidence were getting stronger, while her pathways for avoidance were getting weaker. Behavioral activation. Psychologists have found that action creates motivation, not the other way around. Sarah had been waiting to feel motivated before acting, but research showed that acting despite not feeling motivated is what creates lasting change. Exposure therapy. By gradually exposing herself to situations that made her nervous, Sarah was teaching her brain that these situations weren't actually dangerous. Each successful experience reduced her fear response to similar situations in the future. The confidence-competence loop. As Sarah tried new things, she became more competent. As she became more competent, she felt more confident. As she felt more confident, she was willing to try even more challenging things. This created an upward spiral of growth. The first big challenge. 2 months into her courage experiment, Sarah felt ready for something bigger. She had been writing a paragraph each day about her grandmother's journey from Italy to America, and she now had 30 pages of stories, memories, and family history. Fear immediately showed up with new warnings. No one wants to read your amateur writing. You're not a real author. You'll be embarrassed when people see how bad this is. But Sarah had learned to have conversations with her fear, instead of just obeying it. She wrote in her journal, "Dear Fear, thank you for trying to protect me from embarrassment. I understand you're worried about rejection, but I've learned that the only way to get better at something is to start before I feel ready. I'm going to submit one story to our town's monthly newsletter. If they reject it, I'll survive and learn from the feedback." Sarah spent a week polishing her best story about her grandmother's first day in America, speaking no English and carrying everything she owned in one small suitcase. She emailed it to the newsletter editor, then immediately closed her laptop and went for a walk to distract herself from anxious thoughts. 3 days later, she received a reply. "Dear Sarah, what a beautiful story. We'd love to publish this in our next issue. Do you have other stories about your family's history? Our readers would love to hear more." Sarah read the email 3 times, then called her sister, crying happy tears. "I'm a published writer," she said. "It's just the town newsletter, but I'm published." Her sister laughed. "You were always a writer, Sarah. You just finally had the courage to let other people see it." Part 3. The Ripple Effect. Sarah's transformation didn't just change her own life. It began affecting everyone around her in ways she never expected. Her students. Sarah's 6th graders noticed their teacher was different. She smiled more. She tried new activities in class. She talked about her own learning experiences. When students were afraid to share their writing, she would tell them, "I know it's scary. I feel scared when I share my writing too, but being scared means we're about to grow." Her classroom became a place where it was safe to try new things and make mistakes. Students started taking more creative risks. They asked more questions. They supported each other more. The change in classroom culture was dramatic. Emma, the student who had asked the question about adults and dreams, approached Sarah after class one day. "Miss Sarah, you're different now. You seem happier. Did something change?" Sarah smiled. "I stopped letting fear make all my decisions. I started doing things that scared me, and I discovered I'm braver than I thought." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe I should try that too. I've always wanted to join the school play, but I'm scared I'm not good enough." "Fear is just your brain trying to protect you," Sarah said. "Thank it, then do the brave thing anyway." 2 weeks later, Emma auditioned for the school play and got a part. Her family. Sarah's courage inspired her younger sister Maya to finally apply to art school. Maya had been working at a job she hated for 3 years, telling herself she wasn't talented enough for art school. But seeing Sarah transform gave Maya permission to try. "If my scared of everything sister can become a published writer and start planning solo trips to Italy," Maya told their parents, "then maybe I can become an art student." Maya not only got accepted to art school, but received a partial scholarship. Her colleagues. The teachers who had welcomed Sarah into the lounge began seeking her advice. They noticed her confidence in meetings, her creative lesson plans, her willingness to try new teaching methods. Mrs. Chen, the art teacher, told Sarah, "You've changed so much this year. You used to hide in your classroom, and now you're leading curriculum discussions."
What happened?
Sarah shared her courage experiment, and soon several teachers started their own versions. Mr. Rodriguez began teaching guitar lessons after work. Ms. Thompson started a blog about education. The entire school culture began shifting toward growth and possibility. The business that changed everything. 6 months into her journey, Sarah had another conversation with fear. She had been tutoring students informally for years, but always for free and always quietly. She was good at it, really good. Her struggling students improved dramatically, gained confidence, and developed a love of learning. Fear had always said, "You can't charge money for tutoring. Who are you to think you're qualified? There are already tutoring businesses in town. You'll fail and everyone will know you tried and couldn't make it." But Sarah had learned to distinguish between realistic cautions and fear-based lies. She researched local tutoring rates, created a simple business plan, and talked to parents who had seen their children thrive under her guidance. The realistic challenges were manageable. She needed to set rates, create contracts, and market her services. The fear-based lies were just noise. She was qualified, 5 years of teaching experience plus natural talent. There was room for another tutor. Many students needed help. And failure was just feedback, not a character flaw. Sarah started confidence tutoring with 3 students. Within 6 months, she had 15 regular students and a waiting list. She was earning more money tutoring part-time than many people made at full-time jobs. More importantly, she was watching shy, struggling students transform into confident learners. One parent wrote her a thank you note that made Sarah cry. "You didn't just help my daughter with math. You helped her believe in herself. She comes home from your sessions excited about learning. Thank you for giving her the gift of confidence." The trip that proved everything. A year after her courage experiment began, Sarah booked a solo trip to Italy. Not the safe, guided tour she had imagined, but a real adventure. 3 weeks traveling alone through Rome, Florence, and the small village where her grandmother had been born. Fear showed up with its biggest weapons yet. "You'll get lost. You'll be lonely. You don't speak Italian well enough. What if something bad happens and you're all alone in a foreign country?" Sarah acknowledged each fear, then addressed them practically. She learned basic Italian phrases, researched safe neighborhoods, shared her itinerary with family, and bought travel insurance. She prepared for the trip like the confident adult she had become, not like the terrified person she used to be. The trip was everything she had dreamed and more. She walked through the Colosseum, imagining the history that had unfolded there. She sat in cafes in Florence, writing in her journal and chatting with locals in broken Italian. She found her grandmother's village and met distant cousins who welcomed her like family. Most importantly, she proved to herself that she could handle being uncomfortable, being alone, being out of her comfort zone in a foreign country. She was capable of so much more than fear had ever told her. Part 4. The Science of Transformation. By the end of her first year of courage practice, Sarah had transformed from someone who avoided challenges into someone who sought growth opportunities. She wanted to understand what had happened to her, so she researched the science behind her transformation. The neuroscience of fear. Fear originates in the amygdala, an ancient part of the brain designed for survival. When the amygdala perceives threat, it triggers fight, flight, or freeze responses before the rational mind can evaluate whether the threat is real. This is why fear feels so overwhelming and immediate. However, the prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking part of the brain, can override amygdala responses when we consciously choose to act despite fear. Every time Sarah chose courage over comfort, she was strengthening her prefrontal cortex and teaching it to manage her amygdala more effectively. Habit formation. Researchers have found that it takes approximately 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. Sarah's daily courage challenges had rewired her brain to default toward growth rather than safety. What once required enormous willpower now felt natural. Post-traumatic growth. Psychologists have discovered that people who work through challenges often emerge stronger than they were before. Sarah's willingness to face her fears had created what researchers call post-traumatic growth. Increased resilience, deeper relationships, greater appreciation for life, and a stronger sense of personal capability. The confidence-competence loop. Each successful courage challenge had increased Sarah's confidence, which motivated her to try more challenging things, which increased her competence, which boosted her confidence further. This created an upward spiral that accelerated her growth over time. Sarah's transformation was so dramatic that people began asking her to teach them how she had changed. She started with informal conversations, then began leading workshops at her school, and eventually was invited to speak at education conferences, the same conferences she had once only dreamed of attending. Her message was simple but powerful. Courage is not a personality trait you're born with or without. Courage is a skill you develop through practice. You don't need to eliminate fear. You need to learn to act in the presence of fear. Sarah developed what she called the Courage Curriculum. Phase 1. Understanding fear. Week 1 to 2. Learn how fear works in the brain. Identify personal fear patterns. Distinguish between realistic cautions and fear-based lies. Practice fear acknowledgement without fear obedience. Phase 2. Micro-courage challenges. Week 3 to 6. Design daily challenges that create slight discomfort. Practice in low-stakes situations. Build the habit of acting despite nervousness. Track progress and celebrate small wins. Phase 3. Expanding comfort zones. Week 7 to 12. Take on bigger challenges in areas of personal importance. Learn from both successes and failures. Develop problem-solving skills for unexpected obstacles. Build a support network of fellow courage builders. Phase 4. Living courageously. Ongoing. Make courage a life philosophy, not just a temporary project. Seek growth opportunities regularly. Help others develop their own courage. Continue expanding in new directions. Real stories from Sarah's students. Sarah's courage workshops attracted people from all walks of life. Here are some of their transformations. Michael, 45, accountant. I had been dreaming of starting my own accounting firm for 10 years, but I was terrified of failure. Sarah taught me to start with one freelance client while keeping my day job. 18 months later, I'm running a successful firm with 12 employees. The key was starting before I felt ready. Jennifer, 32, single mother. After my divorce, I was afraid to date again. Sarah helped me understand that the goal wasn't to eliminate fear, but to act despite it. I started with small social interactions, joining a book club, chatting with other parents at school events. Eventually, I felt ready to try online dating. I met my now husband 6 months later. David, 19, college student. I had social anxiety so severe I ate lunch alone every day and never participated in class discussions. Sarah's micro-challenge approach helped me start tiny, making eye contact with one person, saying good morning to my roommate, asking one question per week in class. By senior year, I was student body president. Maria, 38, teacher. I had always wanted to learn piano but convinced myself I was too old. Sarah helped me realize that being a beginner is temporary, but regret lasts forever. I signed up for lessons the next week. 2 years later, I performed in a recital. My students saw that their teacher was still learning and growing, which gave them permission to take risks too. Part 5. The Courage Ripple Effect. What started as one teacher's personal experiment had become a movement. Sarah's school implemented Courage Fridays, where students and teachers tried new things together. The local community center invited Sarah to teach monthly workshops. Parents began using her techniques to help their children face fears about school, sports, and social situations. The most powerful part wasn't just individual transformation. It was how courage became contagious. When one person in a family, classroom, or workplace starts acting courageously, it gives permission for others to do the same. Sarah received letters from people around the world who had heard about her story online. A teacher in Japan started a courage club at her school. A father in Germany began taking his anxious son on weekly fear challenges. A teenager in Brazil started a YouTube channel about overcoming social anxiety, inspired by Sarah's story. The ripple effects continued expanding, touching lives Sarah would never meet, proving that one person's decision to face their fears can literally change the world. The Advanced Courage Challenges. 2 years into her journey, Sarah had mastered the basics of courage and was ready for advanced challenges that would have terrified her earlier self. Public speaking. Sarah applied to speak at a national education conference. Standing on stage in front of 500 educators, she shared her courage story and teaching methods. The standing ovation lasted 2 minutes. Creative risks. She submitted her completed novel about her grandmother's immigration story to literary agents. While she faced many rejections, one agent offered representation, and the book was eventually published by a small press. Business expansion. She left teaching to run her tutoring business full-time, hiring other tutors and expanding to serve students across 3 counties. Relationship courage. She started dating for the first time in years, being vulnerable about her feelings and honest about her needs. She met someone who appreciated her authenticity and shared her values. Physical courage. She learned to rock climb, took a solo backpacking trip, and learned to drive a motorcycle. Physical challenges that proved to her that courage applied to every area of life. Each of these challenges still involved fear. The difference was that fear no longer controlled her decisions. She felt the fear, thanked it for its concern, then chose based on her values and goals rather than her comfort level. The ultimate lesson. After 3 years of courage practice, Sarah had learned the ultimate lesson about fear and bravery. The goal isn't to become fearless. The goal is to develop such a trusting relationship with yourself that you know you can handle whatever happens. Fear never completely disappears. Even now, Sarah feels nervous before speaking engagements, worried about business decisions, and anxious about new challenges. But she has proven to herself over and over that she can feel afraid and still take action, make mistakes and still recover, face uncertainty and still move forward. This self-trust became her superpower. Not confidence that everything would always work out perfectly, but confidence that she could handle whatever happened. Not fearlessness, but fearfulness. Being full of fear and full of courage at the same time. Your courage journey starts now. If you've read this far, something inside you is ready to begin. You don't need more time, more confidence, more skills, or better circumstances. You need exactly what Sarah had when she started. A willingness to feel uncomfortable in service of growth. Your courage journey begins with a single question. What would I do if I weren't afraid? Write down your answer. Then ask a second question. What's one small step I could take toward that today? Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for conditions to be perfect. Courage isn't about feeling brave. Courage is about acting despite not feeling brave. Remember Sarah's transformation, from someone who ate lunch alone and avoided challenges to someone who travels solo, runs a business, speaks at conferences, and publishes books. She didn't become a different person. She became who she always was underneath the fear. The same possibility exists for you. The same choice is in front of you right now. What will your first act of courage be? The beginning of everything. Fear will always be part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to be the author of your life story. You can feel afraid and still move toward your dreams. You can be nervous and still speak up. You can doubt yourself and still try something new. Because courage isn't about being fearless. Courage is about being afraid and showing up anyway. It's about saying, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to find out. Your transformation story starts now. Not when you feel ready. Not when you have more courage. Right now, with whatever bravery you can summon today. Take a deep breath. Feel your fear. Thank it for trying to protect you. Then choose growth over comfort. Choose possibility over certainty. Choose the life you really want over the life that feels safe. This is your moment. This is your choice. This is the beginning of everything you've ever dreamed of becoming. The journey from fear to courage starts with a single step. What will your first step be? Remember, every hero in every story was once someone who felt afraid, but decided to try anyway. Your courage story is waiting to be written. The only question is, when will you begin? The beginning of everything. Fear will always be part of the human experience, but it doesn't have to be the author of your life story. You can feel afraid and still move toward your dreams. You can be nervous and still speak up. You can doubt yourself and still try something new. Because courage isn't about being fearless. Courage is about being afraid and showing up anyway. It's about saying, I don't know if I can do this, but I'm going to find out. Your transformation story starts now. Not when you feel ready. Not when you have more courage. Right now, with whatever bravery you can summon today. Take a deep breath. Feel your fear. Thank it for trying to protect you. Then choose growth over comfort. Choose possibility over certainty. Choose the life you really want over the life that feels safe. This is your moment. This is your choice. This is the beginning of everything you've ever dreamed of becoming. The journey from fear to courage starts with a single step. What will your first step be? Remember, every hero in every story was once someone who felt afraid, but decided to try anyway. Your courage story is waiting to be written. The only question is, when will you begin?